Hey guys, in this video I'm showing you how to make a basic knotted net. This is perfect for hanging crystals or rocks, shells, whatever small things you've got and you want to suspend them somehow for a pendant or hanger. This is a perfect simple design for just securing something inside a net. For our design today we're using 0.8mm polyester thread, and for these knotted nets we always need one longer length and 3 shorter lengths. I'm wrapping this rose quartz crystal today, so I'm using one 50-inch length and 3 20-inch lengths. These lengths will vary a little bit depending on what you're making your net for. Once you've cut all your lengths, we're going to place all the ends on the short cords together, then placing both ends together and following it back down to find the middle. Now placing the ends together on the longer cord as well, following it back down to find the middle on this cord as well, and then placing the middles on all the cords together. Now on this point we're going to tie a simple overhand knot. So bringing all the cords around to form a loop, bringing the ends through the loop and pulling it down tight onto that spot. I like to pull on each cord as well, make sure it's pulled nice and tight. So this knot here that we've just done will be the bottom of our net. So we're going to work our way up. Now because we've got cords coming out both sides of the knot, we're going to grab one cord out of each side. So just the cords that are sort of sitting next to each other anyway, bringing them together and then tying a simple overhand knot. So bringing them around to form a loop, bringing the end through the loop and then pulling that knot down tight, about 1 centimetre away from that centre knot. Pulling both cords to make sure they're tight, and now we're going to do the same on the opposite side. So pulling out the cords that sort of sit next to each other already, pulling them out nice and straight from that centre knot, and bringing the cords around to form a loop, bringing the tails through the loop and pulling it down nice and even with that knot on the opposite side. Now I tie some more overhand knots on these other cords so that we've got 4 knots and they all sit nice and evenly. So one on this side with both of those 2 cords, and one on this last side as well. So you should have 4 knots on this first layer, and then we'll also have 4 knots on each layer moving forwards. Now laying your net on the table, you should have a sort of cross shape. So we're going to be taking 2 cords, one from each knot, so the 2 that sit next to each other, and then tying a knot there as well. So just pulling tension on that center knot, bring those 2 cords that sit next to each other together and tying an overhand knot. Pulling it down tight about 1 centimetre away from the previous knots. Now working around our net and grabbing the 2 cords that sit next to each other, pulling tension onto that big centre knot, tying another overhand knot. So that's the second one for this layer. We've also got these 2 cords as well, pulling tension on that centre knot, tying an overhand knot there, and this last knot over this side. So again pulling our tension on and tying another knot here as well. So that makes the second layer of our 4 smaller knots. You should be able to start to see your net forming. So you can start to try it on your crystal or whatever you're wrapping and have a look at how it's sitting and how you might be wanting your knots to look moving forwards. Sometimes they have irregular shapes or inclusions and things that you're going to want to wrap around as you go. This one's looking really good to just keep going about the same size. So we're going to do another 4 knots. Pulling 2 cords in together that sit next to each other, holding tension onto that center knot, and just tying another layer of overhand knots. Making sure each knot is nice and even, and you pull each cord tight as well. So that's our third layer of knots. You can keep trying your crystal in between each layer and just seeing how it's fitting. Sometimes it's a little bit of a wrestling match to get it on there nice and tight, but you do want it quite tight so it's nice and secure, and you also don't want any holes that are big enough for your crystal to fall out. So we definitely still need some more layers of knots. So here's our net with our fourth layer and our fifth layer. So just trying it on our crystal to see how we're going for size. Sometimes you have to work it a little bit to get it on, especially if it's an odd shaped or rough crystal like this one. But you do want it sitting nice and tight. Pulling all those cords up towards the top to see if you need to tie any more knots. You can always untie and retie any of these knots as well if you're not quite happy with them. But I really like how this is looking. I can also see that I don't have to do any more layers of knots. So to secure our wrap, we're going to bring two opposite cords up to the top and tie them in a knot. Pulling nice and tight. And then bring two other opposite cords into the middle. I bring them under that first knot. And then tie these ones in a knot as well. So that secures your wrap in the center nice and strong. Now pulling all of the cords upwards and grabbing one cord and just wrapping it around nice and tight all of the other cords, and then pulling one other cord out to tie that on too. Once that's nice and secure, we can cut all the short cords off, making sure to cut only the short ones off, leaving the two longer ones there. Gently melting the ends of each cord as well, melting and tapping to fuse them onto the knot. Once you're happy with it, you can tie one more knot in the top for your hanger. So that's a really simple technique for making a basic knotted net to hang your special pieces in.